By the morning after the State of the Swamp event, 7 networks had run the clip. By noon, the clip of De Niro reading the letter had been viewed 22 million times. By the following morning, Trump had posted 14 times about ratings, about talent, about a man he described as washed up, deranged, and not even a good actor. He did not post about the letter. He did not post about the words inside it. He did not post about the sentence that had landed in the room like a stone dropped into still water and sent concentric rings outward through every platform that carried it. The sentence that said, in the flat, documentary register of a man who has spent a career studying the internal geometry of dangerous men. I know what he is. I've spent a lot of time studying bad men. The event was February 24, 2026. The room was large. The list of names on the document De Niro carried to the microphone included nearly 500 artists, directors, musicians, and actors, alongside more than 50,000 ACLU supporters, all of whom had signed a letter whose opening line described government threats to free speech as strikes at the heart of what it means to live in a free country. De Niro read it aloud. He read it the way a man reads something he did not write but has agreed completely to mean, in the voice of ownership, not recitation. He said the letter began, "We the people must never accept government threats to our freedom of speech." The room was quiet. But to understand what made that room quiet and what the geometry of the moment reveals about the 8 years that produced it, you have to go back to a Sunday night in June of 2018, to Radio City Music Hall, to the specific 34 seconds that started a war between a 79-year-old actor and a man who had just become the most powerful person on the planet. June 10, 2018, the Tony Awards. De Niro walked to the microphone to introduce Bruce Springsteen. His task was ceremonial, the short, warm introduction of a performer, the kind of thing done in 60 seconds and remembered only by the person introduced. He stood at the microphone. He adjusted nothing. He looked at the room. He said, "I'm going to say one thing." He said it. The broadcast went silent, the sensors hitting the delay, the screens going dark, the sound cutting out, while inside Radio City Music Hall, the audience of actors and directors and writers rose to their feet. The standing ovation was not for a performance, it was for a sentence. 2 words, bleeped on television, heard in full by everyone in the room and everyone who watched the audience rise and understood, from the rising, exactly what had been said. Trump posted by midnight. He called De Niro a low IQ individual. He called him a tough guy who was not so tough in person. He said nobody cared about the Tony Awards. He said the ratings were a disaster. He did not address the sentence. He addressed the man and left the sentence standing in the record, unchallenged, getting louder in the silence around it. That was the geometry of the next 8 years. De Niro said something. Trump called him low IQ. De Niro said something else. Trump called him low IQ again. The pattern ran from Radio City to the courthouse steps in May 2024, where De Niro stood outside the Manhattan hush money trial and called Trump a tyrant, a buffoon, a unique and growing threat to fundamental rights. To the National Board of Review, to the Stop Trump Summit manifesto, read by Miles Taylor, while De Niro recovered from COVID to Cannes, where he delivered a statement about Trump's tariff threats to art and cinema, in the specific, unhurried register of a man who has been making this particular argument for 8 years and has not changed his mind about any of it. Each time Trump posted, each time the word was low IQ, each time De Niro said something new and Trump called him the same name. The specific, recurring inability to find a second word that reveals, in its repetition, the limited available vocabulary for responding to a man who keeps arriving with different evidence and the same conclusion. The conclusion was, he's damaged. De Niro said it outside the Supreme Court building on April 1, 2026, to a Fox News reporter. The specific choice of outlet that makes a statement unignorable to the people who most need to hear it. He said, "People don't like him for a reason." He said, he had the chance to do nice things, not hateful retribution, not outright mean things. He said, if he did nice things, people would love him, but he's got a problem. He said, he's damaged. He said it standing on the steps of the Supreme Court building, minutes after Trump had broken every historic precedent by becoming the first sitting president to attend oral arguments before that court, and then left the building at 11:25 a.m. while the lawyers were still talking, before the arguments concluded. De Niro had been inside the courtroom. He had watched the arguments. He had watched the exit. He walked outside and said, to a Fox News camera, damaged. The case before the court that morning concerned Trump's effort to strip citizenship from roughly 200,000 Americans born on American soil to undocumented parents, the same constitutional question that Rosie O'Donnell's citizenship threat had raised 8 months earlier, now arrived at its formal legal destination. De Niro stood on the steps and described the man who had filed the case and then left the building before it was decided. He said it without a document, without a letter, without a folder, placed on a desk under television lights. 6 weeks later, he was back. February 24th, 2026, the State of the Swamp event, the counter-state of the Union. He walked to the microphone the way he walks to every microphone, with the settled, unperformed weight of a man who has been doing this for 8 years and has not once arrived uncertain about what he intends to say. He spread wide at the podium, both hands claiming the sides of it, the complete physical grammar of someone who owns the space they are standing in without requiring the space to confirm it. He picked up the letter. He said, the letter began. He read the opening. We the people, government threats, free speech, the heart of what it means to live in a free country. He read the names, nearly 500 of them. He said, I signed it. He said it in the voice of a man who has been signing his name to things that cost him something since 2018 and has not found a single one of them not worth signing. He said, I choke on the phrase, we all love our country. He said, because our country isn't so lovable right now in the current climate. He said it without acceleration, without the rising register of performed outrage, in the flat, even voice of a man who loves a thing enough to be honest about what is happening to it. The room went quiet, the way rooms go quiet when a man in his early 80s says something true about a thing everyone in the room also loves and is also watching be damaged. Not the silence of shock, but the silence of recognition, the specific stillness of people hearing said aloud the thing they have been carrying without a name for it. By midnight, Trump had posted, low IQ, not a good actor, washed up, deranged, 14 posts, 0 addresses of the letter, the 50,000 signatures, the sentence about the country not being so lovable right now, or the geometry of 8 years of the same name called at a man who kept arriving with different evidence and the same finding. The confirmation arrived at 2:31 a.m., not from a network or an anonymous source, but from the public record itself. A researcher cross-referencing De Niro's 2018 Tony statement against Trump's documented claim made 3 weeks earlier at a cabinet meeting that he had more talent in his little finger than De Niro had in his entire career. The claim had been made, the record had been checked. Trump had no documented formal acting credits. De Niro had 2 Academy Awards, a Cecil B. DeMille Lifetime Achievement Award, and a Kennedy Center honor. The record was not a matter of interpretation, it was a matter of counting. The geometry is documented, the 8 years are in the record. And a man who has been called low IQ across 17 posts and 4 presidencies and 2 trials and 1 courthouse and 1 Supreme Court argument and 1 counter-state of the Union keeps arriving with the same conclusion in different rooms with different evidence in the flat, unhurried voice of someone who studied bad men long enough to recognize one and has not yet found a reason to stop saying so. Subscribe right now and turn on notifications. The next confrontation is already building, and once you see what's coming, you will understand why silence is always louder than power.